Billy is a 1990 graduate of North Carolina Beta at North Carolina State University. Upon graduation, he served as a regional director for SigUp and traveled in the Pacific Northwest. Today, Billy is the managing owner of Unique Southern Estates, a boutique hospital and hotel, and hospitality management company. In addition, Billy has served as a district governor in North and South Carolina and currently serves the fraternity on our national board of directors as the Grand President. Brothers, without further ado, please join me in welcoming Brother Billy Maddalon as our keynote speaker for this afternoon.
Thank you, Patrick. I appreciate it very much, and it's a real privilege to be here with you today, all over the country. As Pat said, this is a first for me to be joining in virtually like this. So I apologize if I'm a little hesitant. I'm just trying to get used to it. I had the privilege of doing the kickoff at the Richmond Carlson, and so that was a little bit easier because at least I could get some feedback and some body language, but we'll do the best we can, and it's good to spend time with you. So today I wanted to share with you a little bit about defining great SigUp leadership. Our fundamental practice is to follow the guides, the leadership tenets of Barry Posner, Brother Barry Posner, who was an undergraduate board member for SigUp, a little bit of SigUp trivia. But he wrote a book as a college professor and as a researcher. And so a great leader, let's talk about what that is. Again, based on his findings, a great leader understands what it takes to create and maintain the ideal SigUp experience through the BMP and values-based recruitment and growth. Growth is everything. If you can't recruit and grow any organization, SigUp is no exception to that, then you're going to struggle because you're going to lack the horsepower to achieve the desired results. Set specific goals and strives to achieve tangible results. I always like to say what's counted counts. And so I think the word tangible here is critical. You have to be specific and measurable in your goals when you set them. Otherwise, it's not only impossible to know if you've achieved them, it's not fair to you, because when you do achieve your goals and your results, you'll rob yourself of the joy and the satisfaction of knowing that you've done that. So having goals and making them tangible. Fosters collaboration and consistent communication with chapter brothers, volunteers, university partners, and alumni. Collaboration and consistent communication are essential these days. As you know better than I do, with your generation, you're used to having constant information feed and consistent access to communication. And it is more essential than ever that a leader be transparent. Invite people into the circle, and instead of keeping people outside of the sphere of influence or the circle, and be a consistent communicator. I always say, if you think you're over communicating, you're probably pretty close to doing it enough. You can't over communicate today. And finally, puts their people first through empathy and brotherly love. You know, SigUp, we don't talk about brotherhood, we talk about brotherly love, and I think that is unique and sets us apart. It is all about relationships and people. Everything that we're doing in SigUp is happening inside of relationships, and that's what makes it valuable. Outside of the fraternity, when you get into the bigger world, the working world, if you will, you'll find that is largely continues to be true, that to the extent that you can be successful, it's going to require other people other than you enlisting in the same push, in the same desired outcome. And if you will learn to see the challenge through their eyes, feel the issues as they might feel them, and of course express love to others in terms of respect and in terms and through empathy, then I think you'll find that you'll be far more successful. So exemplary leadership, the 5 practices. I was talking about Barry Posner earlier, the 5 practices of exemplary leadership from the Leadership Challenge, which was his book. He is a 1970 graduate of our Cal Santa Barbara chapter. He wrote that with Jim Kouzes. And I would be remiss if I didn't pause here and encourage you to consider going to RUC this summer, if it's not too late to apply for that. The RUC is basically a 1-week deep dive into the 5 practices of exemplary leadership. It's a terrific program. It's life-changing for, as reported by most RUC scholars. And so I encourage you to, we'll do that at a high level today, but I encourage you to consider doing that this summer if possible. So the first tenet is model the way. I'll let you read what's on the screen. I don't have to repeat it. But obviously, this is a principle that essentially says that when you are a leader, all eyes are on you. And in that respect, everything that you do, everything that you say creates a precedent. People will be watching you. Another word for precedent is standards. So you have to be very careful about and be very intentional about the way that you do your job, because anything that you do as a leader in any organization, regardless of what level of that organization you're functioning in, you're going to be creating footprints, fingerprints, leaving your DNA all over everything that you do. And there's a real possibility that those who follow you will largely do the job in much the same way that you did it, and you will probably be doing you're exercising your judgment and your leadership in much the same way as your predecessor. And so it's really important to pay attention to the fact that you must model a good way, create standards of excellence, and set yourself up for success. Inspire a shared vision. Most leaders don't consider themselves inspirational. And in this case, I think inspiring is a little bit misleading. You can see what's on the screen, but I would say passionate. Being passionate about what you do, enjoying what you do, letting that passion and that joy come out through the quality of the work and the commitment that you have to getting it right, to making new mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes. That's how we learn. I say make new mistakes because we don't want to make the same mistake over and over and over again. Shared is essential here because if you're pulling or leading a charge or trying to go in a particular direction and you're doing that alone, and there's not a shared sense, a shared vision for where we're going, for what matters, what's important, again, what's counted counts. If everyone isn't on board, it's going to be harder, and in fact, it may fail simply because you were unable to get everyone else on board. And one thing I think in my organization is that it's really important when you're doing shared vision work is to let people own it. People will support what they help to create. And so it shouldn't be inspiring shared your vision. It should be our vision, and making sure that to the extent that it can be an aggregate of the visions of those who you are leading and working with, you will be more successful because there will be ownership. Challenge the process. Inevitably, leaders have to find ways to improve processes. There's process and there's results. Complex change and the complexities and the pace at which everything moves today overwhelms people, and it causes inertia. It causes people to freeze and to be afraid of making mistakes, being afraid of getting off track. I think every leader has to ask the hard question. And why are we doing this? Why do we do it this way? Why have we done it this way for this long? Is there a better way to do it? Have the difficult conversation ask the hard question, challenge the process. Don't assume that the way that we've always done it is the best way to do it. If there are better ways, discover them. Be that person who is willing to overcome obstacles by assuming that there's a better way, and challenging previously sometimes closely held notions of what even your role is. It may be that your chapter or the particular role that you're in may be antiquated. It may be that you look at it and say, this doesn't really reflect what we're doing today in our chapter. And so be willing to step forward and ask those questions and challenge those processes, because if you don't, it's very likely that no one else will. Enabling others to act. This is essential because it basically says that all leaders are responsible for finding a way to enlist not only the help of others, but allowing others to become the solution. You are probably, by virtue of the fact that you're in a leadership position, an A-type personality. There's a really good chance that that you're one of these folks like me who likes to just get it done yourself. Sometimes it's quicker and easier to just do it yourself than to ask someone else to help you or to do it for you. I would encourage all of you to consider that as a terrible mistake. You will burn out, you will get tired, and you will underachieve, because none of us can achieve alone what we can achieve together and as an aggregation and effort through others. And so I encourage you to find ways to build opportunities for other people to trust the process, trust you, and enlist them to in the effort to move forward whatever it is you're doing. You'll be more successful. They will enjoy it more. There'll be more shared ownership, because again, when others are able to act and to take part in whatever it is you're doing, they will be more likely to support it. And finally, encourage the heart. This is hard for men, particularly because we have a tendency to just assume that everyone knows how we feel about them, and that everyone knows that if I'm not complaining or if I'm not correcting, that everything's okay. Extraordinary organizations and extraordinary things require hard work. And when we work hard and when people are trying, it is essential as a leader to say thank you, to pick people up off the ground when they fall, to pat them on the back and say, let's try again. How can I help? What do you need from me? In my life, one of the very first times that I ever saw this really done in an exemplary way is when I was an undergraduate at NC State. Our chapter president, Jeff Pratt, who, bless his heart, passed away a few years ago, was one of the great encouragers of heart. He was someone who would be likely to write a note on a piece of paper and slide it under your door and just tell you, I hope you had a great day. Thank you for what you said in the meeting yesterday. I really appreciate how you made me feel the other day when you supported me on this or that, or encouraged this or that. And sometimes he would write a note and just say thanks. And it was a little weird because as you know, an 18, 19-year-old young man, I'd never known anybody to do that kind of thing. But what I can tell you is because Jeff was always so encouraging, because he was always saying thank you, because you knew that he appreciated everything you did and he was paying attention to even the little things. Everybody wanted to work for Jeff. Everybody wanted to be on Jeff's team. And of course, we know that everybody wants to buy season tickets to a winner. Jeff was a winner. And he let you know through his actions that were very empathic, that he had your back, and that made you want to have his. And so you have to be very intentional about this. Don't wait for something wonderful to happen in order to say thank you, or even I'm sorry, I messed up, I screwed up, I hope you'll let me try again. Don't wait for that to happen, find an opportunity to encourage the heart, even in the smallest moments and in the quietest of times, because sometimes that's when people need it the most. So I would love to be able to answer any questions that you might have or concerns before I log off and let you get to the meat on the bone. Pat, how are we going to do this?
I am happy to feed the questions to you, Billy, once I see them in the chat.
Okay.
So first question we have in here is, what was the hardest thing you had to endure during your time as an undergraduate?
That's a really terrific question. The hardest thing, I have to think back now because I'm not, a spring chicken anymore. Let's see. Probably the hardest thing I had to deal with was insecurity. I'm not exaggerating when I tell you I joined a chapter where I was the shortest, dumbest, slowest, ugliest guy in the chapter. And that I was okay with that. I mean, look, my game got better. I understood that everybody in that chapter was better than me at just about everything, and they made me better as a result because men are competitive, and I learned a tremendous amount from my fraternity brothers just through osmosis. I mean, just through being there. But a byproduct of that was I was insecure. I was always afraid that I wasn't measuring up, that I wasn't enough, that I wasn't going to be as successful as everyone else. And in fact, of course, that's part of growing up and being young and youthful. The fact of the matter is I had inside of me at that moment everything I needed to be successful. The only question was how to unleash it, how to open myself up to take chances, to take risks, to create momentum, to get some wind at my back, to take some small risks and get it done. And fortunately, I came from a family that sort of told me more than a few times that I could do it, and I took their word for it, took a chance, and the rest is history. But it was easy to feel very inadequate and insecure when I was an undergraduate.
Thanks, Billy. Next question. What was the best way for you to avoid burnout? And maybe I'll add on a little bit to that question as well. What advice do you have for, or as a chapter officer, what advice would you have for them to avoid burnout?
Well, my definition of burnout is I'm not enjoying it. I've never burned out at anything that I love to do. So I went to NC State on a varsity golf scholarship. And as many balls as I pounded on the driving range in my undergraduate days, I never burned out on hitting golf balls. And to this day, I'm an avid golfer. I love to play golf. I've never, ever burned out. Do you get tired? Do you get weary? Bored? Of course. But burnout is a sign that you're not happy. It's a sign that you're not really enjoying what you're doing. Now, if that happens, and you're in a leadership position where you've been elected or chosen, I suppose one option is to say, this isn't what I thought it was. I thought it was going to be. I'm out of here. See you guys later. That's not probably the way to handle the situation. But what I would say is, if you discover that you're not happy and you're not enjoying it and you're burning out, ask for help. Don't be afraid to say to someone, I think I'm going to need some help here. I'm not sure I'm doing a very good job. I think I'm getting tired. I'm not sure that I enjoy this as much as I thought I was going to, and I'm going to need somebody to sort of help me out, maybe to just get through a rough patch or a bump, or to help take some of the burden or the load off of me. I mean, it starts with being honest with yourself and others.
Next question we have here, Billy, from one of our brothers from one of our newest chapters, California Tall SEC. How would you encourage member engagement?
Well, now, when you say engagement, that I'm not sure I really understand exactly what that means. But I mean, if the question is, how would you encourage members to spend time together and do things together? I guess the challenge there is that I wonder why you would have to encourage that. I mean, from my own fraternity experience, I had to be encouraged not to engage with my fraternity brothers, because candidly, that's all I wanted to do a lot of the times is hang out with my chapter brothers and spend time together. And there were a lot of other things that I'd prefer not to be doing rather than that. But of course, in chapters that are large and small, you've got different dynamics. And so my chapter was some 150 man strong. And so we had, groups of people inside of the chapter that sort of congregated together naturally because of shared interests in other kinds of things. Sometimes it was what major you were in. Sometimes it was age or whatever. And so, I think getting guys to hang out in cohorts, if you will, in groups of within a chapter, chapters within a chapter, that's normally the natural way for guys to spend most of their time with a smaller group of people that they have more things in common with, and then the broader group in the larger effort. So I'm not sure that my answer really is helpful there. I think it's inadequate, but it's probably because in my life experience, I've never had to really try to solve that problem.
Thanks, Billy. Next question we have here. What's the best way to deal with someone who is stubborn with using old, tired ideas and has more influence than you?
Well, that's going to happen your whole life. I've got news for you. I call that person Bubba. Every chapter's got Bubba, right? And he sits in the back of the room, and there may be multiple Bubbas. They all sit back there and they sort of lob rotten tomatoes, and they can be counterproductive and destructive. I'll tell you, my method is you've either got to enlist them or you've got to unlist them. So I prefer enlist them. Part of the way to get Bubba fixed is to get Bubba involved. You got to make Bubba part of the problem. It's a little hard for Bubba to criticize the things that he's part of creating. And so as long as Bubba is outside the circle, as long as Bubba feels like his fingerprints aren't on everything, it's us and them, or we and they, or me and you. And I think your challenge as a leader is to figure out how to get guys that are negative or have old ideas or being counterproductive inside the circle, get them engaged and enlisted in helping to pull in the same direction. Usually that's enough to neutralize some of that. But if at the end of the day, you've got people in any organization who are being destructive and being counterproductive, and the attempts that you make as a leader to enlist them and to bring them on board, to try to get them involved in helping to create the outcomes that everyone desires. Sometimes you have to sideline that person. Sometimes you have to take a more affirmative, aggressive stroke to try to silo or segregate that person and limit some of the damage or the influence that is counterproductive. I won't go into great detail about how to do that today, but there is a point at which all leaders have to acknowledge that we're at a point where, and my grandfather used to always say, it's better to have a horrible ending than a never-ending horror. And so sometimes we have to have a horrible ending. Sometimes things just aren't going to work, and we're at a crossroads. And when you're a leader, you have to be able to recognize that, and you have to be able to make the tough decisions and the tough calls. And sometimes you have to call people out, and sometimes you have to silo them and segregate them so that you can limit the amount of damage they're going to do if it's that bad. But that's a last resort. Again, the best suggestion is to enlist them and to try to encourage them, give them some authority, try to match the task with their skill, with the things that they're good at or passionate about. I mean, obviously we wouldn't want to send make Ben Roethlisberger a wide receiver, I mean, because he's a great football player, but he doesn't have the skill set to be a wide receiver. You don't want to ask people to help with things where their natural skill set or their natural abilities don't nicely align with that. But give Bubba something to do. Give him a job. Get him inside the circle as quickly as you can. Pull him as close to you as you possibly can. And I think you'll see an improvement in attitude. It's when Bubba's in the back of the room instead of the front of the room that Bubba causes the most damage.
Thank you so much, Billy. And run out of time for questions. However, I want to encourage y'all to feel free to take those questions into your small group cohorts if there were any that weren't answered, as well as I know Billy is extremely accessible through his Grand President at SigUp.net too. So I would encourage you guys to send any more questions for Billy there. Any final thoughts, Billy, before we close out your portion?
Well, no, I mean, look, I have a lot of respect for you guys. It's a tough time to be in college. It's a tough time to be in leadership. There's a lot of uncertainty in our world right now, but I would encourage you all to look at it as an opportunity, because anytime there's strife and chaos, it creates the opportunity to begin again more intelligently, to start new things, to reconsider old ideas, to essentially hit reset. So it's a tough time, but there's a tremendous amount of opportunity out there for people who are truly willing to look for a better way to do what you do. And I'll say, as I always do, it's a great day to be a SigUp. I'm 54 years old. I've been a SigUp since I was 18, and I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. So it's good to spend time with you guys. Thanks for listening to me. I hope I've been able to share something with you today that's meaningful and helpful. And you know how to find me. If I can do anything to help you individually or your chapters, please reach out.